everyone. So today, this week, we're going to continue with our main course, and this week's content is the Unit 3's and Unit 4's grammar points. So in Unit 3, we are going to revise on what we have learned in the previous module. So in this unit, we are going to talk about the quantifiers and the articles. So let's start first with what is a quantifier. Quantifier is a word or phrase that used to talk about quantities, amounts, and degrees, or they can be used as a noun, like as a determiner, or without a noun, so as a pronoun. So let's start with something that we know, let's revise what we know first, okay? So we are going to start with the thing that you know already, that some and any. So we use some as means a limited quantity. So we have a quantity, but we don't know how much is it. So we're saying a limited quantity, and we can use some in countable and uncountable nouns. Doesn't matter. And we use some in only positive sentences. Do not forget that we use some only in positive sentences, but there is an exception to that. This exception is that we can use some in questions, but that question should be about requesting something or offering something. So you know that you have something and you're offering it, like, would you like some tea? Because we know that we have the tea, okay? So in some, you can use it in the questions only when you're requesting or when you're offering something. Any means that it's an indefinite, unknown quantity, so we don't know how much is it. So we're using it in countable and uncountable nouns, doesn't matter. But we can use any only in negative and questions. Do not forget that. We cannot use any in positive sentences. We have to use it only in negative and questions, okay? Like, do you have any lemonade left? Or, I don't have any butter in the fridge. Something like that. And we can use a few. A few means that less than some, more than enough. It's somewhere in between, okay? And we use a few only in countable nouns, okay? And we can use a few or few with positive sentences only. There's a difference between a few and a few. A few means that something is enough, something that is exactly what you need. You don't need more than that, okay? But few means not enough. You don't have something that is enough for you. Like, there's difference in two sentences, like, I have enough friends that I can go out. It means that the friends that I have is enough for me. But if we say I have few friends who I can trust, it tells us that I don't have enough friends that I can trust and maybe have fun with. And the other one, a little. We use a little or the little with only in uncountable nouns, only in uncountable nouns, and we use them again in positive sentences. The difference between a little and little, again, is the same with a few. So we use a little with something that we're talking about enough, but we use little with something that is not enough. For example, I have a little milk left, so I can make a cake. It tells us that the milk that is left is enough for making a cake. But if we say that I have little milk left, it says that it's not enough to make a cake. So I have to go out and buy some. Okay? All right. The other thing that we know, this three, much, many, and a lot of. We know that these three have the same meaning. They're talking about a large quantity. So when we're talking about large quantity, we can use those three. But the difference is that they are used, some of them are used with countables, some of them are used with uncountables. So let's start with much and many. So we use much only in uncountable nouns, and most of the time we use much in negative and questions. You can use much in positive sentences, but those sentences are formal sentences. So what you should do is that when you're not using formal sentences, try to use a lot of, okay? The same thing goes with many. Many only used in countable nouns, we use it in negative and questions, but if we use them in the positive sentences, that sentence must be formal. Formal as in like a government state, okay? So when you're making a government statement, then you can use many or much in positive sentences. But most of the time, try not to use it. We can use a lot of with everything, with countable, with uncountable nouns, with positive, negative, or questions. Doesn't matter. So if you're not so sure about something, let's say when you're in a test, try to use a lot of, or when you're in a speaking, because most of the time we're trying to speak properly. And then when we're making a sentence like, should I use much or many? Go with a lot of, if you're not so sure, okay? And yes, no. So, no is, as you know, something negative. So that's why we have to use no only in positive sentences. Why? Because the form has to be positive, whereas the meaning is negative. No gives the meaning of negativity. English cannot have double negatives, so you cannot use no in negative sentences. And you can use no in countable and uncountable nouns. For example, I have no friends. This means that I don't have any friends. Okay? So what you can do is that if you don't want to use any, you can use no, but that sentence must be positive. Okay, plenty of. Plenty of is the informal style of this much, many, a lot of. Okay? But we use plenty of only in positive sentences. This is informal style, don't forget that. You cannot use this plenty of in formal style. But you can, if you want to, let's say that you're speaking to your friend, family, you can use plenty of. Plenty of has the same meaning of many or much. And we can use it with countable or uncountable. It doesn't matter, okay? And enough. We know that enough is as much as we wanted or as much as we needed something, and we can use it with countable, uncountable. The sentence type doesn't matter, so we can use it with positive, negative, or question. So we can use enough with everything that we know. So these ones were something that you know that we already revised on. Today we are going to learn about these quantifiers. First, we're going to start with a bit or bits of, okay? So, a bit or bits of is the informal alternative of some or a piece of, okay? So, when you're talking about an informal style, you can use a bit or bits of with countable nouns or uncountable nouns. And we can use this bit or a bits of with every sentence type that we know, positive, negative, or questions, as you can see in this example here. For example, here we have the sentence, do they need a bit of help with their luggage? So instead of this bit of help, it is the same with some help. Do they need some help? See, some help, requesting, offering something. Or there were bits of glass everywhere. Again, a piece of glass, pieces of glass everywhere. So instead of this pieces of or some, we can use a bit of or bits of. But do not forget that this is the informal style of speaking or writing. And we can use all, and that means that all is used with everyone or the whole, okay? And then we can use all in countable and uncountable nouns. We can use it in positive sentences and questions. All has a positivity in it, so that's why we cannot use all in negative sentences. Let's look at the example. All my friends are away at university, so it tells us that every friends that I know are away, are gone to the university, or all tickets cost £25. Again, we're talking about all, the whole of everything. Okay, and none. So, whereas this no is a determiner, is used before a noun, none is a pronoun. So, it is used instead of a subject or an object, okay? So, we use none as in not one or not any. and we can use it in countable and uncountable. And again, none gives the negativity in the sentence. So that's why we have to use none only in positive sentences. The form is positive, whereas the meaning is negative, as here. So Sam seemed to try to find some strength which would let her speak, but none came. No strength came here, okay? And as you can see, none came. None acts like a subject here, okay? Or my mother had 2 brothers and my father had none. So my father didn't have any brothers. And here, none acts like an object. So this none here is a pronoun, takes the name, okay? So you can use none only in positive sentences, and this is different from no, as these are pronouns. Okay, that was it about the quantifiers. So let's start with the articles. So we're going to start with something that we know, the. So we're going to talk about the definite article. The definite article is that the before a noun shows that what is referring to is already known to the speaker or the listener or the writer or the reader, whatever method you're using. So it is a definite article. For example, why did we park the car? The speaker and the listener knows which car is being referred to. Or we had to paint the apartment before we sold it. Again, we know which apartment we're talking about. So the makes a noun specific. When you're talking about not general, specific things, then you have to use the. So let's look at this, let's compare it with a, an, or the, okay? For example, have you been to an ice rink? It tells us that we're asking about have you ever been to any ice rink. We're not talking about specific thing. We're talking about a general thing. Have you ever been to a general ice rink? That's the meaning. But have you been to the ice rink? The speaker and the listener knows which ice rink we're talking about. So maybe that's in the town or that's in the town centers. And the makes the noun ice rink specific. Okay, yes, how do we pronounce the? This is very important because this th sound is the most important sound in English, because if we don't pronounce it correctly, our meaning can change, okay? So, first of all, to pronounce the, what you have to do is that your tongue is here, put your tongue behind your upper teeth, the, okay? Behind your upper teeth. The. And whether your word starts with vowel or consonant, you have to pronounce it differently. For example, here, before a noun, the exist, or the apple, the, okay? Whereas when we use consonant, we're talking about the, okay? The team, or the union, okay? When you use it with vowel, try to pronounce that as the. When you're using with consonant, try to pronounce as the, okay? It's not the or to, it's the. Okay. And we can use the before countable nouns where they refer back to a specific example. For example, the rice we bought in Thai shop is much better than the supermarket rice. So we're making it. Normally, we don't use any articles with uncountable nouns, right? But here, we're making it specific. Then we can use the. Or the weather was awful. Again, this is an uncountable noun, but we're using it to make it specific with the. And we use the with a general, plural nouns when we're referring to a specific set within a general class of people or things. Like, let's look at the example here. Books are important in my life. So we're saying that all the books are important in my life when we use it without a definite article. But if we use it with the books were all over the floor, we're talking about a specific type of books, okay? We're talking about the books that you and I know. And when we're talking about general, about inventions, musical instruments, or cultural institutions such as cinema, the theater, the opera, then we use the. Like, the computer must be the greatest invention ever. So we're talking about the computer as an invention, not a specific computer. Or the violin sounds different to the viola. Again, the musical instrument. I love A Night at the Opera. Again, we're talking about a cultural institution. And we use the with things known to everyone. Because they're part of our physical environment and they're one of a kind. Like, the earth moves around the sun, or we lay on the grass and watch the stars. They're all only one thing and part of our environmental world. And we use the with mountain ranges and some mountains like the Alps, the Eiger, or with groups of islands like the West Indies, or we can use the with the rivers, the Danube, the Nile, or we use the with deserts like the Gobi Desert, or we can use the with seas like the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, geographical regions or habitats like the Amazon rainforest, or we can use it with motorways like the M45, the E5, and the names with some countries like the People's Republic of China or the United Kingdom. But we don't use article with individual mountains or lakes when the name includes mount or lake, like Mount Fuji or Lake Victoria. And we also don't use articles with continents like Asia, Europe, Africa. We don't use it with countries. We don't use it with towns and the streets. And we don't use any articles with a determiner, like I like my job. Here we don't say I love the job, I love my job, because we already have a determiner here. So we don't need any definite article. Or does she want this book? We don't say does she want this book, okay? We don't make it specific because this makes it specific. So with any determiner, you don't have to use articles. Okay, that was it for the grammar points of Unit 3. Now we are going to start with grammar point of Unit 4, which is the future forms. So we are going to start with the future simple tense, which we know as will. So where do we use will? We use will when we're predicting about, guessing about something, and we're predicting something that we believe, we think will happen, or when we're stating facts about the future, like there will be strong winds tomorrow in the south of the country. We're stating a fact. Or the year 2025 will be the 400th anniversary of the founding university. Again, stating a fact. Or when you're predicting, you can say that I think this team will win the match. I think, I'm talking about my prediction. Then I can use will. And also, I can use will with decisions and offers. So, when you decide on something while you're speaking, so you instantly decide on something, you can use will. For example, wait, I'll open the door for you, we're offering something. Or, which size do you want, medium or large? I'll have large. I'm deciding while I'm speaking, then we have to use will. And we have another form of the future, which is be going to. Where do we use be going to? When we're talking about our intentions or our plans, then we can use be going to. So when we're talking about the planned events or our intentions, we have to use be going to. Okay? Like, she's going to be a professional dancer when she grows up. So this is something that she's intended to do. Or, I'm going to look for a new place to live next month. So I am planning this, then I have to use be going to with it. Or, again, when we're predicting something, but that prediction has to have an evidence, or certain that it's going to happen, or we have an evidence, then we have to use be going to. Like, it's going to snow again soon. So probably the speaker can see the black clouds that is bringing snow, then we can use be going to. Or, look out, he's going to break that glass. We're certain that something is going to happen because the glass is too near the edge. Again, we're talking about the be going to. So let's compare these future forms that we use. Let's start first of all, will and be going to. What we said that we use will with predictions when we think when we think something will happen. He will be a good doctor. How do you know? You're just saying your prediction. When you're saying your prediction, then you can use will. But when you're saying a prediction that you can see, that you have an evidence for, then you have to use be going to, like, slow down, we are going to have an accident because you're going too fast. Or look at the clouds, it is going to rain. We can see the cloud, we have the evidence, then we have to use be going to. Or when we're talking about decisions, but when you're talking about decisions while you're speaking, then you have to use will. Here, we don't have sugar, I'll buy some then. I decided now, then I have to use will with it, okay? But when you're talking about a decision that you taken before or you planned that, then you have to use be going to, like, are you going to watch the game tonight? So I'm talking about a planned something, okay? Also, we can use will with promises or refusal. Like, I will help you, but I won't lend you any money. I'm promising something or I'm refusing something, I can use will. Or when we're offering something, like, I'll carry your bag, or shall I carry your bag? We're offering something, then we can use will. Also, we can use will with suggestions or requests, like, will you open the door please? We're requesting something, then we can use will. Also, we can use present continuous for future, but we have to be very, very careful about this. Because when we're talking about present continuous for future, we always talk about arrangement, plans happened before. So, I am flying to New York tomorrow morning. In present continuous tense, if you use it for future, then you have to use a future tense time expression here. Tomorrow morning. If you don't say tomorrow morning, just saying I am flying to New York, it tells us that you are doing it now. But we're talking about the future, then you have to use a timed expression for future events. Or I am seeing the dentist at 6, again, a future time expression. Or we are getting married next week, time expression. In present continuous tense, if you use it for future, you have to use a future tense time expression, okay? And also present simple. Probably you will ask, what? But the present simple is normally used with what? When we're talking about facts and general truth, or when we're talking about the habits, right? But also we use present simple tense for timetable events. So when you're talking about timetable events, probably you're talking about the future, because these things don't happen now. They're going to happen in the future. So when you're talking about timetable events, like the train leaves at 4 o'clock or the exams start next week, then you can use present simple with this. Or when you use future time clauses, like when, as soon as, until, then you can use present simple, like I'll retire when I'm 70. We don't say when I will be 70, I am 70, okay? And also we can use the future possibility, when we're talking about the future possibility, may or might. Like, I might go to the party tomorrow, I'm not sure. So we're talking about a possibility here. And if you're talking about a slight possibility about the future, you can use may or might for a future form. Okay, so new thing here, future continuous. The name is mouthful, right? So let's first of all look at the title, future continuous. So we talked about the future is about will, right? Continuous is used with what? Temporary events or a trend or a changing situation, right? So this tense must be about these. Okay, let's look at it. So we use future continuous to refer to temporary actions and events that will be in progress, happening at a particular time in the future. So when you're talking about temporary actions that's going to happen in the future, it's going to continue for a while, then you can use future continuous tense. As in, for example, this time next week, I'm giving the future time expression, then I will be taking photographs with my new camera. So at that particular time in the future, I will be doing something and it's going to take a while, okay? Or next week, they will be flying to Australia from Saudi Arabia. Again, saying that next week, time expression again, and they're going to be flying. The action is going to continue for a while, continuous tense. Then we can use future continuous. And we have some other usages of this future continuous. The form of this future continuous is that we're using will, be, verb ing. Why? Because future is about will, right? Will. And continuous tense is always using be, verb ing, right? So will, be, verb ing. Where we can use this future continuous is that we can use it with interrupted actions in the future, like some action is going to happen in the future, but another action is going to interrupt it. Then we can use future continuous. Like when you come tomorrow, they will be playing tennis. So when you come, you are going to interrupt their action. Or when you're talking about action in progress happening at a specific time in the past. So at 12 o'clock tomorrow, we will be having lunch at school. So at that particular time, we will continue with an action. Or when you're talking about parallel actions or series of parallel actions again. So this is the same with do you remember the past continuous? For example, in the past continuous, we said that while she was writing, he was singing. They were doing the two actions at the same time. This is the same. So you are going to do two actions in the future, and it's going to happen at the same time. Then you can use future continuous, like he will be watching TV and she will be cooking dinner. So these two events are going to happen at the same time. Then we can use future continuous. Also, we can use future continuous to ask a question politely about the future. This is very posh, actually. So you want to learn information, but you don't want to be nosy. Then you can use this future continuous to ask about their plans. Like, will you be bringing your friend to the party tonight? So we're asking a question, but we want to be polite, because if you just say, do you bring your friend to the party? Then it won't be polite. We want to be polite and asking about something, then we can use future continuous tense. Also, when we're talking about emphasis on future plans or intentions, we can use this one. Like, he will be coming to visit us next week. So we're talking about the future plans and intentions, but it's going to take a while, then future continuous again. And when we're describing an event or an atmosphere, we can use future continuous, like, when I arrive at the party, everybody will be celebrating, some will be dancing, others will be talking. So what we do is that we are describing an event. So when we're describing an event, you can use future continuous tense for the future events, okay? And also, we can use actions that are happening now, but expected to continue in the future. Then you can use future continuous tense, like, unfortunately, sea levels will still be rising in 20 years. This still is important. It tells us that it was going on for a while, okay? So the sea levels are rising now, and it's going to continue to rise in the future. Then we can use future continuous. And future perfect simple. Yes. So future, yes, we know we're talking about future. Perfect aspect. Perfect aspects talk about what? Completed, finished action. So when we're talking about a finished action in the future or completed action in the future, we can use this future perfect tense, okay? So when we look back to the past from a point in the future, we can use this future perfect form. And we usually use a time phrase, for example, by tomorrow, for 3 years. So we're talking about finished by a certain time in the past. We can use future perfect. And perfect tense, so what is the form is that we use because of will, because of future, we have to use will. And perfect. Perfect events what? Have verb 3. So here we have the verb 3. For example, do you think she will have seen the doctor by 4 o'clock tomorrow? See that we're talking about an action that is completed by in the future. And she will have seen. In he, she, it, we don't change have to has. it's always going to stay as have, okay? Or next month, my parents will have been together for 30 years. For 30 years, they are going to be together. This is a completed action. Or at the end of this month, they will have been in their house for 1 year. Again, we're talking about a finished action by a certain time in the future. So, lastly, so when we're talking about the future action, as you can see the form here, okay? So when we're talking about an action that will finish before a certain time in the past, you can use it. So by 8 o'clock tomorrow, I will take off for Japan. So we're talking about that. When the clock strikes 8 o'clock, I will already be gone to Japan. Or when you're talking about an action that will complete it before another event takes place. So one action is going to complete it, then another action happen in the future, then you can use future perfect tense as she will have learned Chinese before she moves to China. So it tells us that first she's going to complete learning Chinese, then she will move to China. And when we're talking about express conviction that something happened in the near past, when we can use future perfect. So for example, the guest will have arrived at the hotel by now. So when we're talking about the finished action, we can use it. So let's look at what we have learned. And so we have future forms when we're talking about the future future actions that as will or be going to. These are simple, future simple events, action tenses. We have future continuous, which we use it for an action that's going to be happening in the future for a while. And also we have future perfect simple, which is used for events finished by a certain time in the future. So that was it for this week's content. So your homework is that in your book, Upper Intermediate, for Unit 3, I want you to do 130 and 131, and for Unit 1, 132 and 133. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next week. Have a good day.